ASMR. Hey everybody, we're gonna try and get through this video. I have tried a bunch of times and these kittens make a lot of whiny noises, and then the mother gets upset too and starts making noises. This is the room that they like to be in, and this is the room where all my recording stuff is. But we're gonna give it a try. I have some Diet Coke. No gum today because someone left me a comment the other day on, I don't know what video it was, I don't remember, but they said something like, get that gum out your mouth or something like that. Like, it was kind of a weird thing. Like, it was kind of a compliment because they said they liked the whispering, but they didn't like the gum chewing and stuff. But I don't know, I think it could have been worded a little bit better, but I totally get it. Not everybody likes obnoxious gum chewing. In fact, a lot of people don't. So I think that I should split up my videos here. Some should be non-gum chewing, so this one is going to be non-gum chewing. We are going to be trying to read some ghost experiences from the shadowlands.net. This is super old website. I don't know if anybody remembers it from like the late 90s, early 2000s, but they had like a list of haunted places, and people would submit their ghost experiences and stories, and they had information about like different cryptozoology creatures like Bigfoot and like Goatman and Mothman and things like that. So but it's super old, so I have no idea how old these stories are, because it's like a super basic looking website still. I think that it's been under construction for years now, but I'm not positive. It kind of reminds me of I'm dating myself here, but when I was in high school, like in like 1999, and then in like after I graduated in like 2000, you could make your own website with basic HTML. It sounded like I said HTML, through Angel Fire and GeoCities websites. And that's what that reminds me of. But anyway, I think we better get started here. Oh my god, that creeped me out. One of the cats was like made a growling noise. It is like a little girl or something making a moaning sound. Anyway, this story is called Uncle Mike. I interviewed the owner of this haunted house located in southern New Jersey about 12 years ago. This is the story she told of some incidents in her house and others with her family. This house is on a quiet street in a small town. It started in the early 60s when Joan's brother Mike, wait, did I say Joan already? Okay, whatever. Where was I? When Joan's brother Mike started dating a wild girl whom the family called Reds. One night out, Mike and Reds were joyriding around Philadelphia. Both of them were intoxicated. Reds kept telling Mike to drive faster and faster. His speed still did not satisfy. She reached her foot over and stepped on the gas pedal. Mike lost control and slammed into a utility pole. Reds was killed in the crash, and Mike was seriously injured. He was even unable to attend the funeral. He was ordered to remain at home in bed When the family returned from the funeral, they went up to Mike's room. Just this little, I don't know. As soon as they walked in the door, Mike began to describe exactly what Reds was wearing in the coffin, down to the rings and other jewelry. The family asked him how he could know all of this since he wasn't even there. He told them that Reds had just been there to visit him. Years later, Joan's son, Bobby, was supposed to ship out to Vietnam on the following morning. His Uncle Mike told him he would stop by in the morning to give him a lucky coin that would bring him luck and protect him. His uncle was very persistent about Bobby getting this coin. The next day, the whole family was there to see Bobby off at the airport, except for his Uncle Mike. As they waited for him to arrive, Bobby bought his two young sisters Raggedy Ann dolls. His uncle never showed up, and Bobby had to leave without the lucky coin. When Joan arrived home, her neighbors told her to put on the TV and watch the news. She turned on the TV, and the scene was of her brother Mike laying dead in the street. He had been killed while attempting to rob a bank. He was trying to steal a coin collection. One night, while Bobby was on guard duty near the front lines, he saw a figure approaching him in the distance. He called out for the person to identify themselves. Bobby had never fired his gun at a person before, and he was hesitating. The figure was even closer in an instant, and he recognized it. It was his Uncle Mike. His Uncle Mike told him to turn around, and he spun around to be face to face with a North Vietnam soldier with his bayonet raised. He fired instantly, killing the enemy soldier. He quickly turned around, but his uncle was gone. Joan received many letters from men in Bobby's platoon who told of mines not going off, shells veering off in opposite directions, etc. All of these occurred when Bobby's life was in danger. His uncle had failed to give him the lucky coin, so he was protecting him from beyond. During the war, the sisters had started sleeping in Bobby's room. This was the same room that Reds had visited years before. One night, they both awoke to find the Raggedy Ann dolls sitting up in bed, laughing at them. That's creepy. Side note here, I find it really interesting that for The Conjuring and Annabelle, they made this like porcelain doll look super, super creepy and evil looking, but the real Annabelle, you know, in their museum is actually like a gigantic Raggedy Ann doll. I think it's even creepier. I'm sorry about the cats. I think it's even creepier that it's a regular old sweet looking Raggedy Ann doll that was supposedly evil. After the war, Bobby went to work as a bus driver. On one late night run, he got the feeling of his uncle's presence, just like in Vietnam. He heard it. I'm sorry, the mic is like, I feel like I need to get that cover thing on again here. It's kind of like, I feel like I'm blowing too hard on the mic. Sorry. Anywho, felt his uncle's presence just like in Vietnam. He heard his uncle say, "Turn around." He did, and there was a man with a knife ready to stab him. He overpowered the man and called the police. Bobby still has times when his Uncle Mike appears to aid him. The day before I conducted this interview, this is the guy who interviewed this person and got this story. The The day before I conducted this interview, Joan's grandchildren were over and were playing in the room that was once Mike and Bobby's room. They ran downstairs to Joan and her friend and claimed someone was watching them as they played. The women went upstairs to look. The room was very cold, but they found no intruder. The girls said they were being watched from the closet. Joan showed the girls there was nothing in the closet. She even stood inside to point this out. As she stood in the closet, she looked up and noticed a small hole in the ceiling above the closet door. She inspected the hole and found a box full of old clothes and things. Among them were the Raggedy Ann dolls that had come alive years before. For the skeptics among you, I met Joan through my mother at our church. She became good friends of the family and later became our town's mayor. I also know Bobby. He was my football coach. Real people, real story. Alright, this next one. The Lady in Green Bay. When I was about 9 or 10, my sister and I lived in an older 2-story brick house. We rented the bottom half, and an older lady lived upstairs. The older lady moved out for a while to live with her daughter, so my mother rented the top half of the house too, so that my sister and I could each have our own rooms. My sister got what was the living room area of the upstairs apartment. It had once been a bedroom, and I got the actual bedroom. It was really pretty with floral wallpaper and everything, very feminine. Across the room from the door, there was another door which led into a very smallish room with a slanted ceiling. It was in the gable of the house and a very small window. Off of this little room was a very little door that entered into a part of the attic. I was really excited about the prospect of having my own room once again. We'd lived in many, many houses, and most of the time I had my own room. I was pretty used to it. I even moved my desk in the little room, which for some reason I named the nursery, even though I was older than that doll age and there was little physical evidence of the room ever being used as such. It was always extremely cold in there, and after a month I moved my desk back. I was also extremely uneasy about having that door open, and I would even prop things up against it, because sometimes, even though it had a pretty good latch, it would open by itself in the middle of the night. Then I specifically remember one night I woke up and thought my mother was in the room. My bed was situated so the door to the nursery was at the foot of my bed. Standing in front of the door at my feet was an adult shape, but it was all shadows. I think that I covered my head and tried to go back to sleep. Another time when I was sick, I woke up and the shape was back. I got the distinct impression that I had called out to my mom in my head, and the figure was answering the call. I sat up a little bit to see if it was shadows from the window or something, but the figure remained. Then I let out a bloody scream for my mom, and the figure rushed across the room to the door leading into the hall. It passed directly through the light coming off of the street, and it was definitely a solid black or shrouded figure. I got the impression that it was a sad lady. I never told my mom because I didn't think that she would believe me. Then after a few months, my mom moved us back downstairs because she could no longer afford the rent for the upstairs. We moved again after another year. There were some other strange things about this house. There were definite hollow spots in the walls, and strange noises come from them sometimes. Also, the basement had several different rooms, including a coal room and this strange meat locker type room. I got the distinct Once I thought I saw a big grinning face in the dark where that door was. The strange thing about this, which makes me think that it wasn't just a 9-year-old's active imagination. Okay, well, the face might have been. Is that about 2 years ago, I was talking with my mom about ghosts and faces that you see out of the corner of your eye. I kept saying, haven't you ever done that? Thought you saw someone. She kept saying, no, never. After I let the subject drop, she brought it up again. She said, actually, remember the brick house on Sawano? Remember when you girls were sleeping in that upstairs part? I went up there one day when you were in school to pick up dirty towels, and I was standing by your closet looking out the window when I just got this funny feeling. Then I thought I saw a woman standing there looking at me. Uh-oh. Train, hold on. Okay, the train is gone. Anyway, so, the mother says that, she thought she saw a woman standing there looking at her, but when I turned my head, she was gone. It was over by that little cold room in the front of the house. Remember that room? I had never told her about that incident. While I was growing up, we had lived in about 15 different houses, so there was no reason for her to just pick that house at random. I apologize for having to cut that off, because of the train. You know what I find really interesting, like, you always hear with these, like, haunted experiences, like, the kids don't tell the parents. It always baffles me. They always say it's because they don't think that they're gonna be believed, or, like, they're too embarrassed or something. It's just crazy to me, because, like, I would be telling people. Mr. M and Pepper. Last month, I had a 91-year-old hospice patient, Mr. M, who was dying of CHF. His wife had died 2 years ago, so he was alone. He had long since given up being able to care for his pet dog, Pepper, a small rat-looking yappy dog who was 16, which is 112 in dog years, herself. Pepper had to be taken away a few weeks ago, so she could be taken care of by Mr. M's daughter, who lived 10 miles away. I was called in to see Mr. M after he had declined, to the point that his doctor had discharged Mr. M from the hospital to go home and be comfortable for his last few hours. By this point, Mr. M was catamose, non-responsive to family, and obviously near the end. Only myself and Mr. M's son-in-law were in the house. The rest of the family kept their vigil at their own houses, waiting for my call. All of a sudden, Mr. M opened his eyes and said, "Come on, Pepper," and died. While not unexpected, the death was so quick and strange, we were kind of stunned. Not 2 minutes later, Mr. M's daughter telephoned to tell us Pepper had died. I have heard of things like this before, but this was my first experience. That is really interesting. I really need to get that little wind thing on here. I just love how I'm ruining the stories by adding little annoying comments like that. USS Forestal Ghost. Mayport Naval Station, Florida. Ghosts are fine. Traditional things have around ancient English castles. Oh, okay. They put the words together wrong. Ghosts are fine. Traditional things to have around ancient English castles. But the Navy says rumors of one stalking the depths of the aircraft carrier USS Forestal have spooked a few sailors. Flickering lights, bumps in the night, locked doors opening, voices on disconnected telephones, and a vanishing figure in a khaki uniform. The figure's even got a nickname, George. At least that's what some of the men say about the Forrestal. In its 4th month of a 6-month deployment in the Indian Ocean and the North Arabian Sea, they were interviewed by Lieutenant James E. Brooks, who detailed the story of the ghost in a 12-page news release issued last month. The report about George hasn't ruffled any Navy feathers, Mayport Navy spokesman L.T. Park Belivar said Thursday. I thought it was cute. I think most people did. What Lieutenant Brooks had in mind was a fluff piece to show the lighter side of the Navy, said Belver, but according to Brooks, some sailors don't think the ghost story is all that cute. George lurks in 2 of the ships below the waterline storage areas, one of them a former morgue. Spooked sailors claim, I've got one guy working for me now who refuses to go down there alone. Our last chief petty officer in charge, who has since transferred, refused to go down there at all, says Petty Officer Daniel Balboa, in charge of the officers' mess. I've never seen any ghost, but you can hear weird things down there, said Balboa. I was taking inventory one night and heard a little noise, like deck grating being picked up and dropped, he recalled. I'd turn around and look, but didn't see anything. When I turned around to begin my work again, the noise would start again. One night, Balboa said he was checking temperatures in food storage freezers and kept finding open doors he had shut behind him. It is impossible for anyone to open the refrigerator doors from the outside behind me. To open them from the outside requires a key, since the doors lock automatically. I had the only key with me. That incident puts me on the verge of believing, he said. Some say the ghost is a chief killed during a 1967 flight deck fire that killed 137 sailors in the Gulf of Tonkin off the coast of North Vietnam, Brooks wrote. Others guess he's a pilot whose body was once stored on the ship. Petty Officer James Hillard hasn't ventured into the haunted areas since he saw George last year while checking out odd footsteps. He was wearing a khaki uniform like an officer or chief would wear. He says he followed the apparition into a compartment, but there was nobody in there, and I swear that is where he went. Hillard said Mess Specialist 2nd Class Gary Weiss saw a khaki-clad ghost go down a ladder to pump room number 1. Whoever went down into the pump room never came out, and the ladder is the only access, he said. Hillard said he once was helping move supplies when a telephone that was reportedly disconnected kept ringing. The phone rang, and I answered it. This time there was a faint voice calling, "Help, help, I'm on the sixth deck. Rumor had it that a crew member was killed down there. I'm very scared to go down there alone. If I do, I get out of there as fast as I can," Hillard said. Others are dubious. I think it's the guy's imagination, said Senior Chief Petty Officer James Williams. I'm not superstitious, but when I go down there myself, I find it uneasy. When that happens, your imagination is going to play tricks on you. Oh wow, that was from 1988. That one actually had a date on it. Creepy, but have you guys heard about how, like, on a ship, when someone dies, they have the sailors eat a bunch of ice cream to make room for the bodies in there? I have heard that a lot. I'm not positive if it's true. We're going to do one more story, and I'm going to split this into 2 parts so that I can have more stories on Friday. Okay, last one for today. The Frail Old Woman. See, I think these are super old because this was submitted by an AOL email. And like I said, the looks of the website. But my parents recently bought a nice house on 180 acres. The house itself is not that old. It was built in the 1950s and sits on top of a large hill surrounded by trees. Just recently, for no apparent reason, we've had a rash of strange happenings. One day, while practicing her piano and becoming quite frustrated with a particular piece, my little sister Monica heard a voice behind her saying, "Come on, Monica, you can do it. Keep trying." She turned around to see a frail old woman dressed in black, sitting in a lounge chair. Monica screamed and got Mom and Dad, but the lady was gone. Not a week later, Monica was taking a shower in Mom's bathroom when she happened to glance in the mirror, only to see the large face of the same woman staring back at her. One of the reasons I believe that she wasn't lying is because she ran screaming out of the bathroom, naked, into a gathering of my parents' friends. Over Thanksgiving, while saying grace at the dinner table, our china cabinets and everything in our dining room began to shake violently, much to the dismay of our entire family. During Christmas, we thought it would be fun to hypnotize Monica just for play. She started counting, then started skipping numbers, and soon was actually in a different state. It wasn't 30 seconds later that she started screaming at the top of her lungs that she's going to kill me. She has a knife. Oh my God. When my dad finally woke her up, she could only remember a lady with red hair chasing her in her house with a knife. The final blow was just recently. My final blow, it finally convinced those non-believers. My father has a favorite leather chair that he sits in and day out. It was in close proximity to a window which my mother opened for some air before a rainstorm. Dad, worried about his chair getting wet, told Mom not to open the window with his chair there or it will get ruined. The next morning, Dad was up early for work and noticed that the den had been rearranged so that his chair was no longer by the window, but instead across the room. Dad left for work thinking that all the kids did this the previous night. Mom woke up to the same thing and thought Dad did it. It wasn't until dinner time that we discovered the room had been completely rearranged, down to the magazine placements and table leaves, and not by human hands. We figured it was done between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning. Not a sound was even heard, though the kids' rooms are directly below the den, and the den floor is hardwood. Mom and Dad used to brush it off, but not anymore. Okay, you guys, I will see you Friday for more.